Okay, so we are still in planning, and during planning we'll have to identify. At least we should develop a plan for managing the risk. So the inputs for risk management are the scope statement, managed cost management plan, schedule management plan, communications management plan, enterprise environmental factors and organizational processes, and the tools and techniques are planning, meetings and analysis, and you come out with a risk management plan. So what could be the typical contents of a risk management plan? I'm sure that Sanjay should be knowing it inside out. First of all, for identification of risk itself, we should decide who will identify, when it will be identified, who will document it. So all these things need to be, there should be a plan for it. The simplest of these things could be, for risk management, should you have a separate meetings or should it be part of your regular project review meetings? So that itself is a major decision. So all those things are done during this session. The contents of a risk management plan, we have the methodology, budget, timing, scoring and interpretation, reporting format, and tracking. Any questions on this? Yeah. Okay. See, a simple thing is, okay, now if I have to conduct periodic risk management meetings, or let's say risk identification meetings for every phase of a project, that should appear as a separate activity in my project schedule, which incurs additional cost. Okay, so if I have a separate risk review meetings, all those things should be factored into my schedule, which invites additional cost. And if I have to even hire an expert for risk management, okay, then definitely it is additional cost. So here we are talking about two types of committees. One is maybe a steering committee who will be just assessing the progress of the project. Okay, so so that is one. That could be just a working group or a core steering committee who will be guiding the progress of the project. Then if you're talking about change control during execution and all those things, then we have a CCB, change control board. And the composition of these two teams and the purpose of these two groups are different. So are we talking about the steering committee or are we talking about the change control board? Steering committee will be more accountable for the milestones and removal of any obstacles which the project team faces, those kind of thing. Whereas CCB's focus will be, the change control board's focus will be, now let's say if there is a scope change based on a change request, maybe from one of the stakeholders, now doing the impact analysis, additional cost, working out the additional cost and additional time and all those things. So if it is a steering committee, then primarily it should be the major stakeholders, which may comprise of maybe mostly department heads, which are impacted by this particular project. Whereas if it is a CCB, yeah, go ahead. That's right. So mostly the sponsor will be the chairman of this, could be the chairman of the steering committee. Okay, so that is for effective achievement of milestones and impediments removal and all those things. Whereas for smooth project execution, which is slightly micro, maybe any changes to the scope which is requested by the customer or maybe by the engineering team, those kind of decision making will be done at the change control board, which may be presided over. The sponsor may not come for the CCBs every now and that stops with the project manager and the quality manager and the audit team, those kind of people. Okay. So these could be the contents of a risk management plan. The methodology, the budget, timing, scoring and interpretation, reporting format, and tracking. Again, it's critical now because nobody knows who will be doing it, at what frequency, who will document it, who will review it. So that's a decision one has to make at the start of a project itself. Yeah, it depends on the criticality of the project. Okay, now if it is an ordinary project, okay, we may stop with qualitative risk analysis, which is nothing but you come out with a risk register and then you arrive at the probability factors and the impact factors, P into I, and then prioritization based on a risk rating matrix. There you may stop if it is an ordinary project. But if it is a mission critical project, maybe a NASA kind of a project, you may take it further. You may get into quantitative procedures like simulation techniques like decision trees and Monte Carlo analysis and those kind of things, which may not be applicable for ordinary projects. But if it is a rocket launch kind of thing, they may get into all sort of statistical models. So it depends on what is the type of your project. For ordinary projects, at least you should come out with a risk register, which is dynamic. Yeah, it is not a one-time exercise. It is a very dynamic process where you'll have to, when a child is very small, the risk is very less, when the child crosses between 1 to 5, the risks are different. 5 to 10, the risks are different, and 10 to 20, maybe even drug abuse and all those things could come in. So that is different. And 20 to 40, it is different. 40 plus, the heart attack and all will come. Yeah. So when the project progresses, some risk will become, because I will not get a polio after 50 years of age. If at all it has to happen, it should happen before the age 10. So some of the risks will become redundant. There is opportunity for some new risks. So it is dynamic. It is not about just creating one list and then forgetting about it. So somebody will have to revisit it every now and then add some new risk, remove some obsolete risk, then review the effectiveness of the risk management actions we have taken. So all those things will get into it. Yep, Sanjay. So it's very easy. If I say hi, Sanjay, means both will listen. So that's good. Okay. Yeah. So it's fine. Documentation reviews. Generally, we say that any requirements documentation against which you cannot write a test case, an acceptance test, that is a probable risk. So we cannot have requirements like the system should be fast. No way. Maybe we should have a requirements like the system should do 10 transactions per second with maybe 20,000 concurrent users. Then maybe yes. Then there is no risk. But if somebody says system should be fast enough, means it cannot be tested, then there is a potential risk. That's right. By the client. Yeah. So otherwise, yeah. So even for IT projects, we should be very clear. We should have the acceptance criteria. So otherwise, you will be at the mercy of the stakeholders who may change their opinion every now and then. Then checklist analysis. We used to have this requirements review checklist, contract review checklist, design review checklist. All those checklists may throw out some of the risks. And assumptions analysis. Now if somebody makes an assumption like, okay, every day I have a manpower availability of 8 hours per day, which is not valid, because in 8 hours time you'll be spending time on some other projects as well. That is a risk. And what about unplanned holidays, leave, and if it is a Middle East country, now during Ramzan time and all, people will be working only 4 hours per day, and if you have made an assumption like manpower is available 8 hours per day, that assumption itself is wrong. So and that will lead to project slippages. So we'll have to look into that. Diagramming techniques like mind maps and all those things may help you to arrive flow charts, and all those things will allow you to identify some risk. Then comes SWOT analysis. That is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So you can analyze the SWOT of the customer. You can analyze the SWOT of the project team. So those things also will reveal some other risk. And then comes expert judgment. You can always get experts who have worked in similar projects in the past, and then straight away they can throw out, they can give you a set of risks. So that is also possible. The output of all these things is a risk register, which is not static, which is a dynamic document, because every now and then new risks can get into it, and existing risks, if it is not applicable anymore, we can delete from it as well. That's right. That's right. It could be both actually. It will start from the statement of work. Okay, so if somebody says that, okay, my assumption is that, okay, see, now electric supply is available for the project execution work. But then if you again go and analyze it, if it is the project is happening in India, I need 230 volts. I will have only 230 volt supply, not 110 volt supply. Now there is a risk. Okay, and if the project is now somebody say you can carry out your work 8 hours per day, that is an assumption, and maybe during the monsoon time it is not available. So that assumption is wrong. 8 hours per day, 365 days a year assumption is gone. So I'll have 8 hours per day maybe for 200 days. The balance 165 days, it is always lesser than 8 hours per day because of climatic conditions. Yeah, so one is, okay, now you have to bring it into the risk register. Then the next step is, okay, attaching a probability factor. What is the probability of this happening? And next is, okay, if that happens, what is impact? So that is the next step. So we'll be talking about that. First thing is you come out with the risk register. Then so what all the potential risks will get into the risk register. Then the first round of screening happens, that is based on probability and impact. So what is the probability of this technology obsolescence happening? And if that happens, what is the impact on the customer's business? So on a 1 to 10 scale, you arrive at these two things, and then you multiply, and there could be some cutoff lines, a threshold. So we'll talk about it as we progress. Now, when we say risk register, it is a repository of all the potential risks that may happen or may not happen, which gets refined, in the subsequent steps. Okay. Then the risk management is continuous in nature. It is always forward-looking, and it is based on anticipation and mitigation. The focus is always on early and aggressive risk identification, and the risk could be pertaining to cost, schedule, and even technology, as we already discussed. Uh, for identifying risk, maybe see now this slide we should be very clear. There is something called business risk versus insurable risk. So I will not be able to insure. I will not be able to start a business and then take an insurance for that thing, because uh, business risks are not insurable. Business risks are not insurable. So I cannot take an insurance for a business risk. All other forms of risks are insurable. A business risk cannot be insured. Then the classification could be effect-based risk classification. That means if the risk happens, will it have an impact on the schedule? If the risk happens, sorry, the risk happens, will it have an impact on the cost? The risk happens, will it have an impact on the quality? If the risk happens, will it have an impact on the scope? So that is on the effect-based classification. Then comes a source-based classification. From where is this risk originating from? Is it a requirements-related risk? Is it a design-related risk? Is it a contract-related risk? No, is it a human resource-related risk? From where it is coming from? So those kind of classifications we call as a source-based classification. Then the next is the levels. Based on levels of uncertainty, you can classify them. Known risk, known unknowns, unknown unknowns. Known risk means you know that it is there. That is a known risk. Known unknown. If I tell you that, okay, see, I have not taken my blood pressure reading for a very long time now. I know that I don't know about it. That is a known unknown. That's a risk. And similarly, when we discussed about a work breakdown structure, for some of the work packages, we brought the term called control account. So wherever we don't have sufficient information, we were operating them through a control account, which is a provisional account. So all the work packages operated through a control account is a clean risk. Okay, that is an example of known unknown. We know that we don't know about it. So that is a known unknown. Unknown unknown is force majeure things like war or cyclone or earthquake and all those things. That falls under unknown unknowns. So why are we doing all these classifications? Because very often whatever risk we know we manage, but then sometimes the risk which is happening are the ones which escaped our radar of things. If you look at the Japanese earthquake and all, they managed everything they could perceive. But then they could not think of the containers and ships coming and hitting a building, and then which stops the coolant, the generator to the cooler of the nuclear plant. So that chain reaction they did not visualize. Otherwise, they had managed all the perceivable risks. But then something that happened was something which eluded their risk register. Okay. Okay. Then other classifications of risk, we have something called a positive risk. So generally we think that the risk is always negative, which need not be the case. There can be positive risks as well. Now let's say in China, the Apple launched the iPad or something, and the shops were ransacked by people. They could not control the crowd. Yeah, which is a positive risk. Now the demand is so high. Or if you open a website and suddenly you are expecting 25,000 people to visit on day one, and then suddenly there is a traffic of 2 million people, and the website can crash. So that is a positive risk. Or if you publish a book and you expect 25,000 copies to be sold, and then suddenly there is 2 million demand, and if this book is not available in the bookstalls, you miss that opportunity, you lose that business. So that is a positive risk. So positive risk, if you don't exploit, you miss that opportunity. Then comes negative risk. If that risk happens, there is a negative impact. Then there is a primary risk. This is now see, somebody having high blood pressure is a primary risk. It's so it's okay. Secondary risk could be maybe if you take the medicine for blood sugar for blood pressure for a very long time, that medicine itself can have a side impact. So that is a secondary risk. Or maybe I don't know. So a militant group in a particular country could be a primary risk. But then if that militant group is removed, sometimes maybe that country may slide into ethnical war, maybe civil wars, maybe. So maybe even if it is a terrorist group, they would have had a balancing effect on the society, and suddenly one leader is removed, then suddenly it may have a negative impact on the balancing of the society, which may slide that country into civil wars, so which is a secondary risk. Then residual risk. See now, a terrorist group is removed from a particular country, but still they can regroup and come back again. So that is a residual risk. So cancer patients, if you see, after taking the treatment, they're quite okay, but then still they should go for medical checkup and all. Otherwise, again it can crop up again. So that is an example of residual risk. So if you have understood what is a positive risk, negative risk, primary risk, secondary risk, and residual risk, then we can proceed. See, you cannot forget about it. Maybe the probability of and impact of that particular risk may be below the threshold. So we have every tendency to forget about it. So all they're saying is, okay, don't forget about it. Periodically, you'll have to revisit it and see where it is. Okay, so that is the only thing. And for every risk, for every risk, there are two parameters, that is probability and impact. So probability and impact. So now if you take our PMP certification as an example, now what all could be the risks for our PMP certification? So maybe lack of study, lack of preparation, lack of study, a lot of risk could come in, and for every risk we may attach a probability and an impact. And for probability, lack of study, the probability could be a 5, and if that happens, the impact could be a 9 because you'll fail in the exam. Maybe overconfidence, maybe the probability could be a 5, and if that happens, maybe the impact could be 8. Or sometimes like a lack of confidence. I've come across a lot of people, if they write the PMP exam, they'll pass, but then somehow they don't write. So lack of confidence also is a major risk. So maybe the probability could be a 6 and the impact could be again 8. So we can identify all the risk and associate a probability factor and impact factor to it. Then you multiply these two, probability into impact. So here I'm getting 45. So here it is 40 and here it is 48. So my company may have a threshold like anything 40 and above I'll manage, means okay, then all these things I'll manage. Yeah. So this step we call it as a qualitative risk analysis based on probabilities and impact. First you come out with a risk register, then you attach a probability factor and impact factor to it. Then you multiply the probability factor with the impact factor, P into I, and then you get these numbers. and the company may have some thresholds like anything 40 and above we manage, means all these things we'll manage, and if something is less than 40 we will not manage. Okay, so there are two steps. One is qualitative risk analysis. Qualitative, QUA. It is coming in the next slide. So one is qualitative risk analysis and the other one is quantitative risk analysis. Now this is qualitative. P into I is a qualitative. Okay. As a project manager, I've done it. But I've seen enough people misusing it also, because they do all these things during the first week of the project and after that they just forget about it. But for me it was like, if you involve the team to do this, then they are also, it's a good thing. They are also aware of, what all things can go wrong and all those things. So the team building could be much better. You can really use it as a tool for team building. So personally I don't do it. I involve the team, we brainstorm, and then put that probability number and impact number. Then we brainstorm on the corrective action. So it is not a standalone process for me. It is part of regular project management for me. Okay, so that way it was beneficial. But if you're doing it for a third party, now let's say IS auditor is coming, so let's do it, kind of thing. So that will not give you any value. Yeah, so that is more like day after tomorrow I have a medical checkup. So today I'll go for a morning walk, means that will not help. Yeah. So every day it should happen. Otherwise, it's no use actually. As you said, okay, see, in most of the places, okay, I've seen generally people don't use it in the right way. But if you can, we are talking about professional project management, so we are not talking about what inefficient people are doing at their workplace. We are talking about what efficient people do at their workplace. So these are all good practices. Then we are getting into qualitative risk analysis. Here we are talking about risk probability and risk impact, probability and impact metrics, risk quality, data quality assessment, categorization, urgency assessment, and expert judgment. So risk urgency assessment, I think I don't have a slide on it, so let me talk about it now. See, now in software and all, people talk about, we call it the cyclomatic complexity. Like if there is a requirements related defect, if I can remove in the requirement phase itself, that will cost me one factor. But if a requirements related defect, if I'm removing during the design phase, then this is to the power of 10. Then a requirements related defect, if I am removing during the coding part of it, this becomes 100. And the same defect, if I am removing during the acceptance test and all those things, that is going to be 1000. Yeah, so if I have to be very efficient, this gate should be very clear. Like requirements later risk, defects I should be capturing within the requirement phase itself. Design later risk, I should be capturing within the design things. So the risk management is directly linked to this. So requirements later risk I should manage here itself. Design later risk I should manage here, kind of thing. Okay, so that's how it is going. Then you become very effective. So this has a direct bearing on risk urgency assessment. Okay, fine. Likewise, maybe see the probability of a child getting polio and all may be very less, but then it has to be managed before the age of 3 or 4. Yeah, it has to be managed before the age of 3 or 4. Otherwise, it is a risky business. So P into I may be very less, but still it is very urgent. No, it should be done immediately. Okay, then we are getting into qualitative risk analysis. I will not be able to bring it to a logical end today. So what we do is, okay, we can continue with this maybe the next day. Okay, because risk management is pretty exhaustive. So this qualitative risk analysis and quantitative risk analysis, the first thing is, okay, I'll record videos on it and then I'll put it as lessons, and we'll discuss it in the next session. And when can we have our next session? Yeah, better. Tuesdays and Thursdays. So next Tuesday we'll have one session. Next Thursday also we'll have a session. Right. So in the meantime, please go through that PMP online. Okay, so that also will help you. So I'll send you this invoice and all today. Today or tomorrow I'll send it to you. Yeah. So nothing else. So we'll call it a day then. Most welcome. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks. Thanks. Bye. Yeah, that's okay. So I can send to you maybe this week itself. I'll send to you. Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thanks.